Welcome to the Great Lakes Fishing Podcast presented by Fishhawk Electronics. If you're looking for news, tips, and stories about fishing the Great Lakes, you've come to the right place. And now your host, Chris Larson.
Welcome to the Great Lakes Fishing Podcast. We're joined now by Doug Straub from FishUSA. FishUSA is a leading fishing retailer based in Erie County, Pennsylvania. Doug, thanks for joining the show.
Thank you, Chris. Glad to be here.
Doug, for people who are unfamiliar with FishUSA, tell me about the company and kind of what it's all about.
Well, FishUSA was started in 2000 by our owner, Dan Pastore, out of his garage. So it's a really unique story, really small town USA. Somebody that had a vision back in 2000 when a lot of people were saying, hey, the internet's crazy. Look at it now. It's pretty cool to see. And so really, FishUSA was started really in trolling, in the roots of, the Great Lakes, salmon, steelhead fishing, trolling, fishing the rivers and streams. So kind of our product assortment in the beginning was really tailored to the Great Lakes. And I think that's where a lot of our connection to the Great Lakes comes from. But there's no mistake about it. We are a national brand. We sell fishing tackle all over the world, countries like Australia, Japan, all over the place. So it's really cool to see. But one couple areas that we're really starting to focus on is bass fishing, kayak fishing, and there's a ton of opportunity there, and we're excited to be in that space.
How long have you been with the company, and what's your role there, Doug?
So I've been with the company for 10 years. It was 10 years in June. So been here quite a while. When I first started here, there was 7 employees, and we have approximately 40 or 50 now. So it's been pretty neat to see the growth that we've had. And it's been quite a journey, to say the least. When I first started at FishUSA, I was in customer service. Took a job right out of college just to get my foot in the door. And that's one thing. That's a question I get a lot: is how do you get into this industry? My biggest thing I always say is you just get your foot in the door and do your work. And from there, I became a buyer. I worked in the buying merchandising department for years, and now as of today, I oversee our merchandising department and our marketing department as well.
I wanted to have you on today to talk about the retail landscape when it comes to fishing. We're in the midst of COVID-19 pandemic. I don't know if you've seen the news at all, but apparently this is kind of a big deal. How has that affected your business?
To say it's been a challenge is an understatement. Everything you can imagine has changed. There's periods of time where many of us, the office folks, were working from home, which is something we've never done. So that was essentially within a few days' notice. You got to change what you're doing and how you operate. So we're trying to set up phones and computers for folks at home. There's a lot of work that's involved with that. We were not set up to do something like that. So that was a transition period. The thing that really we've done a really good job of is our warehouse, and we've really taken this thing seriously. Our management team and the folks that are really on top of this, we're very strict about wearing masks and sanitizing everything. We've done a really good job with that, and I think the employees have really appreciated it and embraced it, which I think has been very positive and something we've had to do. There's always going to be some rumbling and grumbling here and there, but overall, it's been really good and really positive. But we're working through it. So one thing about FishUSA, it's a very resilient company. We've had some very extreme challenges, and we always pull together and make it work.
Yeah, on the operations side, obviously it's had to change how you do things. But how about sales? What have sales been like since all of this has started?
It's been interesting. When COVID hit, approximately mid-March, that's really as we start into the preem buying season. What we've seen from really industry-wide is we've never seen anything like this. And I say this a lot: the fishing industry was not prepared for this type of volume and this many people to get into the sport. Not only just the avid anglers, which FishUSA really caters to, just fishing in general. I'm reading all kinds of reports, and I've seen reports nationwide where states are, across the country, fishing sales are up 40%. That's a monstrous number. 10% is huge. These are unprecedented numbers, and it's really hit the inventory really hard. It's hit manufacturers really hard. They're trying to keep up with demand. They have restrictions with what they can do in their warehouses, how many people can ship orders. There's manufacturers that the smaller manufacturers are doing pretty good of being able to keep up. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. So the bigger the vendor, the more challenging it's been. They have some big warehouses, so they're dealing with a lot of people in their warehouses. So the chances of getting COVID are much higher as well. So if somebody in the warehouse gets it's COVID, they've got to shut down, and it's happened. So it's a challenge. Fortunately for us, we've been fortunate through all this. We haven't been hit at all with COVID, but I know some of the warehouses, the manufacturers, have been hit pretty hard with it, and it's been a challenge for them. But from a sales perspective, it's been really good. I mean, I think all retailers, both brick and mortar and online, have done well through this. At this point, the biggest issue is inventory, and finding inventory, and we've had to really get creative over the last little while. There's definitely a shortage. Certain categories like spinning reels is extremely hard to find product right now.
Yeah, we had a gentleman on a few weeks ago, and his term was tackle is the new toilet paper. That supply chain has really made things difficult. How have you guys kind of been able to pivot and continue to do business and continue to sell things, even though things are difficult to find, especially when we think about what life was like, a year ago, if you needed to get some spinning reels compared to today?
We've had to really scrap really hard. We buy from a lot of different places. We scour distribution. We scour with the manufacturers. We don't just lock ourselves into buying from one person. So we really go out and try to find what we need to get. What we got to do. It's nobody would have drawn up if we looked at our sales curve and the inventory that we've had to bring in. It's not what you would typically draw up, and that's we've had to be creative. Our buyers have done a phenomenal job of really getting creative to find inventory. And, I give our entire team a ton of credit for pulling through. And I think we're starting to get on the backside of this a little bit from the challenges from the business perspective. There's still going to be some challenges, but I think the inventory is starting to get a little bit better. And I think we'll be in pretty good shape here sooner rather than later.
You kind of alluded to a little bit earlier, talking about looking at some smaller manufacturers. So how do you think that this is going to change kind of the future, at least the near future, in how things are done? Do you think that will strengthen some of these smaller manufacturers?
Absolutely, 100%. This is, I think, not to make light of the situation, a small manufacturer's dream because it's got people to use product that they typically wouldn't. People like FishHawk, people like Dreamweaver. It's a great scenario for them, and they're doing a really good job. I know they've had some challenges. But this is good for small business. And if you can work through the challenges, I think is a tremendous opportunity. And I do think some of these smaller manufacturers are going to come out of this really far ahead.
Yeah, our culture has been trained over the past few years that they can get just about anything in about a day or two from Amazon. With the supply chain issues we're having, that's really not realistic anymore. And how are consumers handling that? How are you helping consumers, and what's kind of been the feedback with them with not being able to get the things that maybe they usually fish?
That's I would say that has been our biggest hurdle, is the expectation piece. And a lot of it is just part of, when we can commit to our part if we can ship within 24 hours, which is our goal. And we do that. And we are doing that today. The challenge is once it leaves our facility, it's going in a lot of different places, and things are being rerouted. Packages are being rerouted away from COVID hotspots. And it's typically where it would take 2 days for a package to get to your house. It's taking 4, 5, 6 days now. And that's not just FishUSA. That's everybody. Everybody is dealing with this. You go on any website right now, and people are saying, their customer service departments are overwhelmed. And, unfortunately, customers don't always understand, and I don't expect them to. At the end of the day, we try to do what's right. We try to make the situation right. We work with them. If we can't get the exact product that they want, we'll do our best to get them a substitute product and find a way to make them happy. At the end of the day, this business is about customer service, in my opinion. And there's a number of ways you could define customer service, but you got to just do your best. Try to make the customer happy. But right now, it's tough. There's no question about it. There's challenges with the carriers, and just got to keep plugging through and do your best.
I brought up the A word there. Amazon is a Goliath in the retail landscape. How does a company like FishUSA continue to grow with something like that, with that kind of competitor chewing up such a large chunk of business in just about every category? How do you guys, as kind of more of an independent type retailer, how do you compete with somebody like that?
Well, I challenge anyone to call Amazon. There's your first thing you can do. You can't talk to anybody at Amazon. You can talk to people at folks like FishUSA. You can pick up the phone, and we're going to answer the phone, and we're going to give you expert advice. Our staff is full of anglers. The folks in our pro shop, the people on the phones, they live, eat, and breathe this stuff. And you're not going to get that experience at some of our other competitors. There's a number of other things. Our product selection, it's unmatched with Amazon. They cannot compete with us. There's a lot of brands that they cannot offer, which is one of the advantages that we have. And just again, I go back to the customer service piece. Yes, they can ship very quickly. There's no argument there. But there's a lot of things that they can't do, and even touch what ourselves or any independent retailer can do. And that's one of the areas I really try to stress this to not just people like us, but even our independent retailer competitors. Is there's enough space in here. You just got to commit to be true to yourself, know your brand, know what you're about, and push forward.
Yeah, that goes really well into my next question, because I wanted to ask you about that. Now, obviously, with everything going on this year, it's been pretty good for most retailers. But up until then, if you walked around and talked to people, a lot of retailers, independent retailers in the fishing industry, were really struggling. Why is it important to have healthy independent retailers? I think from a lot of consumer standpoint, if they can save a nickel, they try to do it. But having people like you guys and other really strong independent retailers out there, I think is super, super important. Can you tell us about why consumers should really invest in independent retailers?
It is the backbone of our industry. It's the backbone of the fishing in general. Without independent retail, fishing doesn't survive. It just doesn't. You cannot get the level of service in big box retail that you can in independent, and that's across the board. There's some phenomenal independent retailers out there that do a great job. FishUSA is one of them. One in our state, Susquehanna Bait Fishing Tackle. They're a huge bass player. They have a great pro shop. I mean, it's phenomenal. They do a really good job, and you're not going to get that level of service, the expertise, the in-depth one-on-one relationship building. Even just with our customers, we have personal relationships with these people that you're not going to get that in big box retail. And that's why independent retail is so important. There's a lot of good people in independent retail, and you're just not going to get the level of service out of big box or some of the bigger players that you will, and with folks like FishUSA or other independent retailers.
You talked about a little earlier about supply chain things getting a little bit better right now. But one of the things I'm seeing as I'm looking forward into the future, at least in the next 5 or 6 months, is a lot of our shows, our sports shows, our ice fishing shows, those types of things are all being canceled right now. So what is FishUSA doing to kind of put themselves in a position to still get in front of the consumer, even though it looks like show season for sure is not going to be what it once was? Who knows what it will look like. Some shows are going to get canceled. Some are going to get really scaled down. What are you guys doing to prepare for that?
Historically, as a company, we've never really it's not something we've really depended on with consumer shows. We do attend a handful of consumer shows a year, ones that we strategically feel are very important. But it's changing. I mean, there's no question about it. Even before all COVID hit, consumer shows they're not what they once were. And I think everybody would agree with that. I think this is going to just further push forward of what ultimately is going to happen. And I think to some degree, there's certainly not going to be the number of shows that we've had in the past. I think there's still the big ones, when things settle down, are still going to come back. But I think there's a number of shows that just are not going to come back, period, in my opinion. A lot of things are going digital. Things like doing these podcasts. We're going to see more and more of this coming out. And there's some unique things that we've talked about internally. How could you really engage the consumer of having kind of like a digital show of some sort? It's things we've talked about, but I don't think it's ever going to be the same. I really don't.
All about fishing in general, being in the fishing industry, selling fishing gear. How do you think that the lessons that we've learned over the last 5 or 6 months, as hopefully things kind of return back to normal, how do you think that these lessons are going to help you going forward, and just what changes do you see that might become permanent?
I do think just in general, business is never, it's going to change how, not only certainly how we do business, but a lot of people do business. I think businesses are realizing, hey, there's certain, maybe it's department, might not be the whole office area or departments. Hey, can they work from home? Is there things that we can do to shift resources around? I think, just there's a lot of things that are going to change, but it's changing. You're never going to know what it's exactly going to be. I mean, nobody could have predicted COVID. Nobody could have predicted how this is all going to transpire, but it's definitely going to change. There's no question about that. And I think it's going to be changed for the better. I mean, we've learned a lot about our business by having to go through this process, where there's some holes, where there's some things that we do really well, but it's also magnified the holes, things we need to improve on. So from that regard, it's helped. Things that we always thought were an issue, maybe they weren't as big of an issue as we thought, but now when something like this happens, hey, well, we really need to fix this. And so from that regard, I think that's been a positive thing that's come out of this.
Is there something I didn't ask you about, Doug, that you wanted to talk about?
No, not in general. No, I think this is great. This is really good. I think for the industry, this podcast for the Great Lakes is really, really cool. It's something you see in many other fishing categories, but hasn't been really done, in my opinion, very well until now. So I appreciate everything you guys have done to get this off the ground, and I think you guys are doing a phenomenal job.
Well, thanks very much, Doug. Thanks for coming on the show. People want to find out more about you and FishUSA. Where's the best place for them to track you down?
Sure. Find us at www.fishusa.com. You can call us, email us, message us on chat, Facebook. We're available all over the place, and you can talk to someone.
Awesome. Doug Straub from FishUSA. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Great Lakes Fishing Podcast presented by FishHawk Electronics. For more information on fishing the Great Lakes, visit our blog at fishhawkelectronics.com.